In the heart of Italy, a nation known for its beauty, its passion, and its politics, a story unfolded that would change history forever. It's a story of power, betrayal, and tragedy, a story that begins with hope and ends with horror. This is the story of Aldo Moro, Italy's former prime minister, a man of peace and vision, whose death remains one of the darkest chapters in European politics. The year was 1916. In the small southern town of Magli, in Italy's Puglia region, a baby boy named Aldo Moro was born into a humble family. From a young age, Aldo showed an unusual calmness, a quiet intelligence that drew people to him. He wasn't loud or flamboyant like many future politicians. He was thoughtful, measured, deeply Catholic, and guided by a sense of moral duty. By the time he reached his 20s, Italy was in turmoil. Benito Mussolini's fascist regime ruled with iron fists, crushing dissent. But Aldo Moro, even as a student, believed in the power of dialogue over violence. He studied law, later becoming a professor, and soon his voice began to carry weight among young Christian intellectuals. After World War II, as Italy tried to rebuild from the ruins of fascism, Moro joined the Christian Democracy Party, the DC. This party would dominate Italian politics for decades, and Moro would become one of its brightest minds. He believed in compromise, in finding balance between opposing sides. He was not just a politician, he was a bridge builder. By the 1950s and 60s, Italy was split between the conservative right and the growing left, especially the Italian Communist Party, PCI, one of the strongest communist parties in the West. In the Cold War atmosphere, when the world was divided between Washington and Moscow, Italy stood at the crossroads. Any hint of cooperation with communists could bring suspicion from NATO and the United States. But Aldo Moro was different. He saw Italy's divisions as dangerous. He believed that the only way to strengthen democracy was to include everyone, even the communists, in the national conversation. This bold idea became known as il compromesso storico, the historic compromise. It was revolutionary and risky. He wanted to bring the communists into a partnership with the Christian Democrats, not to hand them power, but to build unity, to make Italy stronger. But not everyone agreed. Some saw it as betrayal, others as political genius. Aldo Moro became Prime Minister of Italy 5 times between 1963 and 1976. He was respected, cautious, and deeply human. He often carried rosary beads in his pocket, whispering prayers before big decisions. During his leadership, he introduced social reforms, improving education, worker rights, and welfare. He wanted Italy to modernize without losing its soul. But behind the calm surface, danger was growing. Italy was entering what would later be called gli anni di piombo, the years of lead. Bombings, kidnappings, assassinations. The streets of Rome, Milan, and Turin echoed with sirens and fear. Left-wing terrorist groups like the Red Brigades, Brigate Rosse, declared war on the Italian state, claiming they were fighting imperialism and capitalism. And Aldo Moro, the man of compromise, was about to become their biggest target. Morning sunlight painted the narrow streets gold as Aldo Moro's car left his home. He was on his way to Parliament, where a historic vote was about to take place. The Italian Communist Party was set to support the new government, thanks to Moro's long negotiation efforts. It was the first real step toward his historic compromise. But at Via Fani, a quiet Roman street, tragedy struck. At 9:02 a.m., a group of heavily armed Red Brigades operatives ambushed Moro's convoy. In seconds, gunfire filled the air. Moro's 5 bodyguards were killed instantly, their cars riddled with bullets. Glass shattered across the street. Witnesses said it was chaos. The silence after the gunfire was haunting. Within moments, Aldo Moro was dragged into a van, kidnapped. Italy froze in disbelief. The kidnappers claimed responsibility immediately. They demanded the release of imprisoned Red Brigades members in exchange for Moro's life. For Italy, it was a nightmare. The nation was paralyzed, torn between saving a man's life and refusing to negotiate with terrorists. For 55 long days, Aldo Moro was held captive in what the Red Brigades called their people's prison. He was kept in a small, windowless room, what many believe was a secret apartment in Rome. During that time, Moro wrote over 80 letters to his family, to Pope Paul VI, and to political leaders. In those letters, his tone shifted from hope to despair. He begged his colleagues, his friends, to negotiate, to save his life. He told them he forgave them, but couldn't understand why they had abandoned him. One of his most haunting letters read, "I would like my blood to mark the road that you must follow, the road of dialogue and peace." But the government, led by Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti, refused to negotiate. The official stance was firm. The state does not bargain with terrorists. Even the Vatican offered to intervene. Pope Paul VI personally pleaded for Moro's release, offering himself in exchange. But the Red Brigades ignored every plea. To the Red Brigades, Aldo Moro represented the very system they wanted to destroy, a capitalist democracy that they saw as corrupt. But Moro was not their typical enemy. He was compassionate, humble, and far from a tyrant. As days passed, even some members of the Red Brigades reportedly began to question the morality of killing him, yet their leadership was determined. They saw the state's refusal to negotiate as proof that the system valued pride over human life. To them, Moro's death would send a message of war. By early May 1978, hope had faded. Moro's health was failing, and his letters had become heartbreaking confessions of loneliness and faith. He prayed daily. He dreamed of seeing his wife, Eleonora, and his children again. But deep down, he knew his time was running out. On May 9, 1978, after 55 days of captivity, the Red Brigades announced that Moro had been executed. His body was found in the trunk of a red Renault 4 car parked on Via Catani, eerily located halfway between the headquarters of the Christian Democrats and the Communist Party. It was a cruel symbol, as if his death was meant to bridge the two forces he had tried so hard to unite. When news of his death broke, Italy wept. Television screens went black and white. Church bells tolled across Rome. Thousands flooded the streets, holding candles and photos of Moro. Moro's funeral was private, at the request of his family, away from politicians and cameras. It was a quiet goodbye to a man who had given his life for peace. In the years that followed, Italy launched multiple investigations into Moro's kidnapping and death. Hundreds of Red Brigades members were arrested and tried, but many questions remained unanswered. How did the kidnappers manage to operate for so long, right in Rome's heart? Did secret services or foreign powers, perhaps even the CIA or KGB, play a hidden role? To this day, theories abound, but the full truth, remains locked behind political silence. Aldo Moro's death changed Italy forever. For years after, Italian politics became colder, more cautious, more divided. Aldo Moro's story is more than a tragedy. It's a mirror, a reminder of what happens when fear triumphs over compassion, and when politics forgets the people it's meant to serve. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because here we tell the stories the world should never forget.